People say dogs never lie about love. And that morning at Arlington National Cemetery, those words came true in blood and devotion. As the Marine Corps funeral moved with perfect precision, the combat dog Atlas suddenly broke free, sprinting toward the flag-draped coffin of Sergeant Ryan Cole, the Marine who had survived 2 wars but not, it seemed, this one. The sound of his claws raking against the polished oak echoed like someone pounding from the inside. Blood streaked across the American flag as Atlas howled, a cry so raw it froze the crowd in place. "Restrain that dog!" the commander shouted. But Atlas wouldn't stop. He circled the coffin, panting in a strange rhythm. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Emily Cole, Ryan's pregnant wife, placed a trembling hand on her belly and whispered, "Let him say goodbye." But Atlas wasn't saying goodbye. He was trying to tell them something far more terrifying. The man they were about to bury was still alive. The morning sky over Arlington, Virginia, was a washed-out gray, the kind that swallowed the sun and left the world in half light. A cold wind moved through the rows of white headstones like a whisper of ghosts, bending the flags that marked each fallen soldier. The air smelled faintly of rain and gunpowder, an echo of battle carried into peace. The funeral of Sergeant Ryan Cole had begun with military precision. Marines in dress blues stood in perfect formation, their white gloves stark against the black casket draped in the American flag. The color guard moved like clockwork, rifles polished, boots aligned, faces carved from stone. A bugler stood apart beneath an oak tree, his trumpet tilted toward the leaden sky. Emily Cole stood near the front, her hands clasped over the curve of her pregnant belly. She was 32, tall and slender, her auburn hair pinned neatly beneath a black veil. Her skin was pale from sleepless nights, her eyes swollen but dry now. Tears had abandoned her days ago, leaving only hollow endurance. The baby inside her shifted as the wind blew. She placed a trembling hand on her belly, whispering, "Almost over, sweetheart." Beside her, Gunnery Sergeant Brooks kept his jaw tight. He was in his 50s, built like a man forged from years of sand and smoke, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. He'd served with Ryan in Afghanistan. His eyes, gray and unyielding, stayed locked on the coffin as if duty demanded it. At his feet sat Atlas, the dog who refused to sit still. The 6-year-old German Shepherd was a powerhouse of black and tan muscle, his coat thick and glossy even under the dull light. A thin white scar ran along his muzzle, a remnant from shrapnel years ago. Atlas had served 2 tours beside Ryan, trained to detect explosives and track enemy movement. His amber eyes were fierce yet deeply human, the kind that saw beyond orders. Today, though, those eyes burned with confusion. As the chaplain spoke, his voice carried solemnly across the field. Sergeant Ryan Cole served with honor, courage, and commitment. He fought for his brothers, for his country, and for the ideals that define us as Marines. Atlas's ears twitched. He gave a low whine. Emily glanced down, whispering, "It's okay, boy." But her voice trembled. When the honor guard began folding the flag, the first volley of the 21-gun salute cracked through the air. Atlas flinched at the sound, but didn't move. Then came the bugle. The slow, haunting notes of taps drifted across the cemetery, filling the silence between breaths. That's when Atlas stood. It began as a soft growl, a vibration low in his throat. Then, without warning, he lunged forward, snapping the leash clean from Brooks's grip. "Atlas!" the sergeant barked, but the dog was already at full sprint, claws tearing at the grass, muscles rippling beneath his coat. Gasps rippled through the mourners. The coffin sat on a frame above the open grave, the flag, gleaming red, white, and blue. Atlas slammed into it with full force. The polished wood shuddered. His claws scraped furiously at the surface, leaving deep gouges. Blood began to seep from his paws as he tore at the oak like he was trying to dig someone out. "Get that dog under control!" Brooks shouted, rushing forward with 2 Marines. They grabbed at Atlas's harness, but the dog twisted free, throwing one Marine off balance. He howled again, long and piercing, echoing through the graveyard like something ancient and desperate. Emily stumbled forward. "Stop! Don't hurt him!" Atlas circled the coffin, panting hard, his paws leaving streaks of blood on the flag. Then he stopped, ears erect, eyes blazing. He began to whimper rhythmically. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Brooks froze. "What the hell is he doing?" Emily's breath hitched. She didn't know Morse code, but she felt it, the pattern, the urgency. She turned toward Brooks, her voice hoarse but commanding. "Open it, now." "Ma'am, I can't. I said open it," she screamed, her voice slicing through the silence. The crowd stilled. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The funeral director hesitated, his wrinkled hands trembling as he glanced at the Marines. Brooks hesitated only a second longer before snapping to his men. "Do it." The honor guard folded the flag and stepped back. The coffin's brass latches clicked open one by one, loud as gunfire in the quiet. Atlas stood motionless at the head of the casket, chest heaving, eyes locked forward. When the lid lifted, a chill swept through the crowd. The man inside wore a Marine uniform, the medals perfectly aligned on his chest. His hands were folded neatly over his stomach. But the shoulders were too narrow. The jawline was wrong. And the scar on the chin. Brooks recognized it instantly. "That's not Cole," he muttered. Emily pressed both hands to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's not my husband." The mortician stammered. I don't understand. This is the body delivered from—" "Check the records," Brooks barked. "Now!" Atlas let out a deep, low sound, something between a growl and a sigh. He stepped forward and rested one bloody paw on the casket's edge, then sat down beside it, his posture alert, protective, and strangely calm. It was the same position he'd been trained to take when guarding evidence. Someone in the crowd began to cry. Another murmured a prayer. Emily staggered closer, tears finally breaking through. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Where are you?" The baby kicked inside her belly, a sharp reminder that life was still fighting somewhere. Brooks's radio crackled. "Command, this is Gunnery Sergeant Brooks. We have a possible body misidentification at Arlington. Repeat, possible misidentification. I need confirmation on all casualties from Operation Iron Tide." A pause. Then static. Then, "Copy that, Gunny. Stand by." Emily turned to Atlas, kneeling in the grass beside him. The dog's chest rose and fell, each breath labored. Blood dripped from his pads onto the earth. She touched his head gently, feeling the heat beneath his fur. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew it wasn't him." Atlas blinked slowly, as if answering. The clouds broke for a moment, letting a shaft of pale light spill over the field, glinting off the casket's metal hinges. Brooks looked up, jaw clenched. He'd seen strange things in war. Men walking away from explosions, bullets missing hearts by inches. But this felt different. This was no coincidence. The radio crackled again. "Brooks, command confirms. 2 Marines deceased on scene, 1 missing in action. Sergeant Ryan Cole not confirmed KIA. Repeat, status unknown." A collective gasp spread across the mourners. Emily dropped to her knees, clutching the grass, half laughing, half sobbing. Atlas leaned into her, pressing his massive head against her shoulder. Brooks turned to the funeral director. "Close that coffin. We're taking it under custody. I want DNA confirmation on that body before sunset." The older man nodded, pale and shaking. Emily looked up at Brooks. "If he's not dead, where is he?" Brooks's eyes hardened. "If I know Cole, ma'am, he's still fighting his way home." Atlas gave a soft bark, tail thumping once against the ground, as if to say, "Damn right he is." In that instant, the funeral no longer felt like an ending. It felt like the beginning of a mission. The bugler, still standing by the oak tree, lowered his trumpet. The last note of taps hung in the air, lonely and unfinished. Above them, the gray sky began to clear, a thin ray of sun cutting through the clouds like hope breaking through grief. Atlas sat beside the empty grave, watching as the Marines resecured the casket. His paws were bleeding, but he didn't seem to notice. His gaze stayed locked on the horizon beyond the headstones, where somewhere, alive or dying, his partner waited. He let out one final sound, low and mournful, that rolled across the cemetery like a promise. He would find him, whatever it took. The wind at Camp Pendleton tasted like salt and dust, as if the Pacific and the high desert had agreed to share custody of the air. 3 years before the cemetery, the K-9 yard sat under a hard noon sun, chain-link fencing casting cross-hatched shadows over poured concrete. Metal bowls rang from a recent feed, a clatter that faded into the restless chatter of kenneled dogs. Staff Sergeant Ryan Cole walked in with a folder under one arm and a tired knot in his jaw that never quite loosened anymore. He was tall and long-limbed, the hard lines of his face cut by years of squinting into glare and sand. A day-old beard shadowed his jaw, and the set of his mouth told you he'd learned to keep words short when days ran long. His steel-gray eyes, steady but worn, had the look of a man who could be calm in chaos and lost in quiet. Ever since a warehouse in Long Beach went hot and took a brother he couldn't carry out. Sergeant Catherine Walsh met him at the intake board. She was short and square-shouldered, sun-browned and compact, with sandy hair scraped into a no-nonsense bun. A faint spray of freckles bridged her nose, and pale green eyes held that clinic room calm that steadies panicked handlers and shuts down excuses. "You're here for 6 Delta, she said, tapping her clipboard. "Atlas, patrol, explosives, tracking, 3 deployments. Handler KIA in Logar 6 months ago. Since then he's offline." Ryan didn't say he understood. His throat had already said it for him. "Show me." They walked to the end run. The dog in Kennel 6 Delta lay like a statue carved in black and tan, massive head on massive paws, a ridge of scar tissue tracing along his muzzle like a pale thread. 6 years old by the paperwork, but his stillness felt older. The coat was thick but dulled at the spine, as if grief had sanded the shine from it. Amber eyes slid past people and fixed on a middle distance that contained exactly nothing. A stainless bowl sat full. A red Kong toy lay where someone had left it days ago, untouched like a joke that landed wrong. "He doesn't take commands," Walsh said, keeping her voice low. "Won't heal, won't track, won't look. 4 handlers tried. He gave them nothing. I can file a retirement packet, find him a couch somewhere." Ryan crouched, the chain link kissing the brim of his 8-point cover. "What did his partner call him?" Max called him Atlas. The first name came soft, like they were already in a chapel. "Said he carried a whole team on his back." Ryan set his folder down. "My granddad used to say myths break the same as men." He let the corner of his mouth twitch. "Let me try this my way." Walsh frowned, but stepped back. "Your way better be patient." Ryan didn't reach for the fence. He sat on his heels and opened the local paper as if the dog had asked for the sports section. "Padres blew a lead again," he said to the afternoon heat. Bullpen got cute, now everybody's mad. Weather claims Santa Ana might visit and ruin hair base-wide. Also, this coffee tastes like it lost a fight with motor oil. Atlas didn't twitch. His nostrils flared once, measuring. Ryan kept his voice easy, not sing-song or coaxing. He read another paragraph about a high school team, then about tides. When he finished the page, he folded it neat and slid a plain gray t-shirt through the bottom lip of the fence, careful not to brush fur or paws. "Loner," he said. "Smells like bad coffee, gun oil, and a truck that needs new shocks. Deluxe." He stood, not slow, not sudden. "See you at 5:30. The first week went by like sand through a narrow hourglass. Ryan showed before dawn and sat with his back to the chain link, thermos steaming in his hands. He talked sometimes. Mostly he didn't. He ate lunch there leaning on the fence, leaving room for the day to come to him. He took yesterday's t-shirt and left a fresh one each night. Atlas barely blinked. He would drink when Ryan stepped out of sight, eat when the yard quieted, sleep with his paws tucked over his nose like he was trying to keep his own breath from escaping. On day 7, Mia Alvarez swapped water buckets along the row. She was 5'5" and quick on her feet, warm brown skin, black hair braided tight down her back, and the calm, open face of someone who spends more time listening than talking. "He used to lean into the fence when he saw me," she murmured. "Now he pretends I'm air." "He's not angry," Ryan said. "He's grieving. Anger throws punches. Grief covers the mirror." Mia slid the bucket in slow. Atlas's eyes tracked the waterline and then went still again. "You're really just going to sit here and read the paper at him?" "Until he tells me not to," Ryan said. The heat shimmered above the runs on day 10. Ryan finished an article about a wounded Marine running a 10K on a carbon blade. "He says he hates being called inspirational," Ryan told the concrete between his boots. "Says it sounds like a speech people give so they don't have to look too close." Something shifted behind him, a small rearrangement of air. He didn't turn. He took a breath and let it out through his nose like he was cooling a forge. A click of nails. One step, then stillness. Walsh, lingering 2 kennels down, pretended to check tags and didn't breathe. "Easy, big man," Ryan said, voice level. He flattened his palm on the concrete just outside the fence and left it there, fingers relaxed, no invitation and no fear. Atlas watched the hand the way EOD techs watch colored wire. The ears tipped forward a degree. The tail did not move. It didn't need to. Walsh's boots creaked. "You ever break horses, Cole?" "My granddad did," Ryan said. "Taught me to sit close enough that Trust could find me, not so close it felt trapped. Said trust isn't a rope, it's a place you build and wait in." "Your granddad a poet?" He fixed tractors by swearing at them, Ryan said. But he knew animals, and he knew when to keep his mouth shut around people who were hurting. The next morning, Ryan came without the paper. He brought a tennis ball, old felt, softened by teeth. He didn't show it. He talked about nothing in particular. Chow hall eggs that refused to be either scrambled or whole. A corporal at Motorpool who could coax an engine back to life with a wrench and a prayer. A traffic light on Basilone Road that seemed to hate Marines on principle. When Atlas finally lifted his head, Ryan rolled the ball along the ground outside the fence, slow as the tide. It bumped the far corner and settled like it had learned patience from the man who brought it. Atlas looked at the ball, then at Ryan, then back to the middle distance. No miracle. Ryan nodded like the dog had just given a thoughtful answer. Fair. On day 14, Mia came with liver treats that made the other dogs sing the song of their people. She kept her voice pitched soft and low. Hydration, then snacks. Handsome. Atlas lowered his head to drink while Ryan stood in plain view. The change was a whisper, but it was change. After Mia tied her braid higher and shot Ryan a small smile that looked like hope-wearing work boots. "He watches you when you look away," she said, "from the corners of his eyes. That's where trust lives first." That evening, a supply marine, D'Angelo Kilgore, stopped by with a jute tug toy. He was tall and easygoing, walnut-brown skin, close-cropped hair, a grin so unguarded it showed a chip in his front tooth, a souvenir of a high school basketball game gone wrong. "Got you the Cadillac of tugs," he told Ryan, "for when he decides chewing on anger is less fun than carrying it." Ryan set the tug where Atlas could see it, and then ignored it on purpose. Atlas didn't move, but his eyes tracked the corner of the toy once, twice, as if checking whether gravity still worked. On day 17, the wind changed, cool off the water, and the yard smelled like tide and damp earth. Ryan leaned his spine into the fence and slowed his breathing until it matched the faint rhythm inside the kennel. Somewhere down the row, a handler laughed, unguarded and human. Somewhere else, a gate clanged shut. A gull cried overhead and was gone. Ryan slid 2 fingers through the chain link. Just 2. He didn't call. He let the air work. Atlas's eyes cut to the hand and then away. His ears tipped again, then flattened, then lifted. A whole conversation conducted in degrees. He stood, a roll of muscle traveling from shoulder to flank. He stepped forward 1 pace, then another, nails clicking soft. He sniffed the air above Ryan's fingers, paused, sniffed again, and touched once. Just a brush, nose to knuckle. Ryan didn't move. He let the touch be the dog's. Atlas withdrew and sat, posture tall, ears forward like a flag finally remembering wind. Ryan eased his hand back an inch. "Motion carries," he said to the ground, like he was reporting to a room only 2 living things could see. Walsh cleared her throat without looking up from her clipboard. Mia smiled with her eyes closed. "He chose," she whispered. The next morning at 05:30, Ryan clipped a leash through the fence and let it hang. He opened the gate and stepped inside the run, then crouched so his head sat lower than Atlas's shoulder. The dog read every inch like a bomb tech reading schematics. "We're going to walk," Ryan said quietly. "If you don't want to, we won't." Atlas stood and moved to Ryan's left hip, as if a map inside his muscles had been waiting this whole time. They took 6 steps into the aisle. The world continued to hold together. Atlas's tail rose a notch. They walked to the yard and back. No commands, no praise, just the older rhythm of men and dogs on the same road. By afternoon, they reached the training field. The bleachers were empty. A breeze pushed ripples across the grass. Ryan didn't ask for a sit. Atlas sat anyway, chest forward, eyes tugged toward the horizon the way eyes get tugged when names are written out there. Ryan set the scuffed tennis ball between them and nudged it with 1 finger. Atlas lowered his head, sniffed, and set 1 heavy paw on the ball. He didn't push. He claimed it the way a man claims a promise. Mine, not yours. Ours if we agree. When they returned to the run, Ryan left the gate open and sat outside in the shade, not looking in. Atlas stood at the threshold like a Marine back from deployment who needed a second to remember his own house. He stepped out again, turned, and lay with 1 shoulder pressed to the inside of the fence so a hand could meet fur without leaning. Ryan didn't close the distance. He placed his palm on the concrete. Atlas slid his nose forward and rested it lightly on the mesh where Ryan's hand warmed the metal. The light went gold beyond the parade deck. Walsh walked up with a manila folder she didn't offer. "I'll hold the retirement packet," she said. "Indefinite." Ryan nodded. He looked at the dog. Tomorrow, 0500. Coffee's bad. Company's decent. Atlas blinked slow and lifted his gaze to Ryan's face. The past didn't vanish. Nothing honest ever does. But something loosened its grip by one tooth, and the noise inside the kennel quieted enough for 2 heartbeats to hear each other breathe. It wasn't a command. It wasn't even a promise. It was the first brick of a place they would build and wait in together. A small ground cleared at last between a man who had run out of speeches and a dog who no longer believed in them. The desert around Camp Pendleton didn't forgive impatience. It dried out everything: grass, skin, and sometimes even hope. But that morning, as the marine layer burned off and the training yard shimmered in pale gold, Ryan Cole believed the air felt different. It was day 23 since he'd met Atlas, and something beneath the dog's stillness had started to move, like the first crack in winter ice before the thaw. Ryan arrived before sunrise. The compound was quiet except for gulls and the occasional bark echoing from the lower kennels. He carried 2 coffees, one for himself, one that would go cold by the fence. An old ritual he'd picked up somewhere between deployments. He wore a faded tan shirt, sleeves rolled, forearms marked with scars and sun. His face looked less sharp now, as if the silence between him and Atlas had filed the edges. Atlas waited near the front of his run. His coat gleamed again. Black saddle, tan legs, a chest broad as a barrel. His eyes followed Ryan without lifting his head, wary but awake. Ryan knelt, placing his paper cup by the fence. "Morning, Atlas. Padres lost again. I'm starting to think that team hates happiness." He smiled faintly, voice low. The dog's ears flicked once. That was acknowledgement in Atlas's language. A small motion, easy to miss unless you were looking for it. Sergeant Catherine Walsh walked up from the office with her clipboard. "You're making progress," she said, watching Atlas's gaze. Ryan shrugged. "He tolerates my breathing now. I call that a win." "Most people give up before the coffee cools," she said. "Keep doing what you're doing. He's reading you." Walsh left for the armory, and Ryan opened the kennel gate. Atlas didn't move. The air between them was thin glass. Ryan clipped the leash and let it hang loose. "We're walking, partner. Just walking." They made it halfway down the concrete aisle before Atlas matched Ryan's stride. No command, no push. Just 2 bodies learning rhythm again. Outside, sunlight bled through the marine haze, cutting silver lines along the sand. Ryan led him to the lower training field, a rectangle of packed dirt bordered by eucalyptus trees. He dropped the leash, but stayed near. "You missed the noise, huh? The yelling? The smell of diesel? The guys yelling 'Ora' just to hear it echo?" He tossed a worn tennis ball gently. Atlas's head followed it, but he didn't chase. Ryan walked to retrieve it himself, tossing it again, closer this time. Atlas's tail twitched. Once, twice. The third throw, he trotted 3 steps forward, nose down, and stopped over the ball. He didn't pick it up, but he didn't walk away either. "That's a start," Ryan murmured. They trained like that for days. Small things, steps instead of drills, eye contact instead of commands. Ryan learned to move slow, to speak softer. Atlas learned that silence didn't mean danger. By the end of the week, they were working the obstacle yard, rows of low walls, tunnels, and wooden planks set at angles like an oversized playground for soldiers and dogs. Ryan crouched at the start line. "All right, big man. Let's see if these bones still remember." Atlas hesitated, then launched forward. His paws hit the planks with practiced precision, tail straight for balance. He cleared the first hurdle and landed steady. The moment his feet touched ground, Ryan felt something burn behind his eyes. Pride, relief, maybe both. "Good boy," he shouted before he could stop himself. Atlas froze, glancing back, cautious, as if waiting for punishment that never came. Ryan swallowed the lump in his throat and smiled. "Yeah, you heard me. Good boy." Later that afternoon, they sat in the shade near the kennels. Mia Alvarez, the vet tech, joined them with a bottle of water and her usual gentle smile. "He's looking stronger," she said. Ryan nodded. "He's remembering who he is." Mia crouched beside Atlas. She had olive skin and bright brown eyes that always seemed to carry sunlight. "Hey, handsome," she said, holding out a treat. Atlas sniffed, then took it carefully from her fingers. "Progress," she said softly. Ryan leaned back against the fence, watching the exchange. "You talk to every Marine like that?" "Only the four-legged ones," she said, grinning. "They listen better." Walsh appeared again as the sun began to set, clipboard under one arm. "Command approved you for field recertification," she said. "You'll start basic drills next week. Tracking, scent, obedience." Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. "He's not ready for full work." Walsh's tone softened. "Neither are you, but sometimes doing the work is how you get ready." That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. The barracks were loud. TVs, card games, the hum of vending machines. He got up, grabbed his jacket, and walked back to the kennels. The air smelled of rain about to break. Atlas was awake, sitting near the gate, ears up. Ryan crouched outside the run. "Yeah, I couldn't sleep either," he whispered. "I keep hearing things. Boots in sand, my radio crackling. Ghosts don't shut up easy." Atlas stood and padded closer, stopping inches from the fence. His amber eyes caught the moonlight. Steady, not scared. Ryan reached through the mesh and felt a cold nose touch his fingers. The contact lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4, but it was enough. "Thanks," Ryan murmured. "Guess we both needed that." The next morning came with fog so thick it felt alive. The training yard looked like a battlefield in limbo. Walsh was already there, clipboard tucked under her arm, shouting orders to other handlers. "Teams A and B, start grid tracking." Ryan clipped the leash to Atlas's harness and knelt. "Smell," he said, holding a rag soaked with synthetic scent. Atlas sniffed once, ears pivoting. "Find." The word unlocked something. Atlas dropped his head and began to move, tail low, body tight with focus. He traced invisible lines through the dirt, weaving past obstacles, nose glued to the trail. Ryan followed at a jog, heartbeat syncing to the dog's rhythm. When Atlas stopped at the far wall, he barked once, sharp and confident. "Good boy," Ryan grinned, scratching behind his ear. Atlas leaned into the touch. By afternoon, word spread that 6 Delta, the dog they thought was finished, was tracking again. Other Marines gathered along the fence to watch. Ryan pretended not to notice, though the pride on his face gave him away. During break, Mia brought sandwiches and 2 bottles of water. "You look less dead inside," she teased. "High praise from the medic," Ryan replied. He took a bite, then nodded toward Atlas lying beside them, head on paws. "He's the one doing the work." Mia studied Ryan quietly. "You've been different since you started with him." Ryan's jaw flexed. "He doesn't talk back." "That's not it," she said. "You used to move like you were waiting for an explosion. Now you breathe first." Ryan didn't answer. He watched Atlas instead, the dog's chest rising and falling slow and even. The wind tugged at the leash like it wanted to carry both of them somewhere safer. 2 days later came their first field test outside the wire. A training mission in the coastal hills. Rough terrain, scent tracking through sagebrush and dust. Walsh rode in the Humvee ahead, while Ryan and Atlas sat in the back, silent except for the hum of tires. When they arrived, Walsh pointed to the ridgeline. Lost hiker simulation. Trail marker Alpha is 1 click north. Find the dummy and call it. Ryan gave a sharp nod. Atlas, seek. The dog leapt from the truck and immediately picked up the scent. Ryan followed, boots sinking in sand. The sun beat down, and sweat blurred his vision, but Atlas moved with purpose, head low, tail swinging in rhythm. 30 minutes later, they reached a narrow ravine. The mannequin lay half buried under brush, mock blood staining its shirt. Atlas stopped, barked once, then twice, signaling find and confirmation. Ryan knelt beside him, rubbing his neck. Good boy, you nailed it. Walsh arrived minutes later, breathless but smiling. You just passed evaluation. Ryan looked down at Atlas, who sat tall, chest out, eyes blazing with something new. We did, he said. That night, back in the kennel yard, Ryan leaned against the fence, watching the dog doze. You're not broken, are you? He whispered. You just needed someone stubborn enough to wait. The only answer was a soft sigh from the other side of the fence, steady and content. For the first time in years, Ryan felt the same way. The cemetery did not fall quiet after the lid was raised. It held its breath, as if the oaks themselves were waiting to hear a man answer his name. The Marine inside the dress blues was not Ryan Cole. The jaw was narrower, the shoulders smaller. The faint scar on the chin belonged to Corporal Dean Torres, Motor Pool Savant, 27. Gunnery Sergeant Brooks studied the face, then gave a single nod, hard as a stamp. Confirmation. Mistake. Flag back on, Brooks said. We honor the dead while we protect the living. The honor guard refolded the flag with ritual care, while whispers ran through mourners. A woman broke, and the chaplain, slim, graying, held her up. Emily Cole gripped the rail until color left her knuckles. Atlas sat at the head of the coffin, chest heaving, blood stippling the oak, amber eyes locked forward in the stance he used to guard evidence. Emily leaned to him. You knew, she whispered. You knew it wasn't him. Brooks keyed his radio. Command, positive misidentification at Arlington. I need casualty reconciliation from last night and the transport chain. The reply came clipped. Copy, Gunny. Working. NCIS arrived like a shadow in a suit. Chief Warrant Officer Nina Park was mid-30s, compact and athletic beneath a dark jacket, black hair in a bob, olive skin, watchful eyes. She flashed a badge, swept the scene, and fixed on Emily with a medic's steadiness. Ma'am, I'm Agent Park. I'm sorry this happened. We'll secure the casket and the paperwork. We'll find your husband. If he isn't here, Emily said, where is he? That's what we're going to learn. Atlas stood, favoring his torn pads. Park glanced down. This the partner? He's family, Emily said. Atlas. Then Atlas just kept us from burying the wrong Marine, Park said. He rides with us. The funeral director, careful hair, started on procedure. Brooks's stare shut it down. Here's procedure, he said. We don't put the wrong son in the ground. They rolled out under a sky beginning to fray. No sirens. Urgency didn't need noise today. Park drove, Emily up front, Brooks and Atlas in back. Emily's black dress cut against pale skin. Her auburn hair sat in a neat coil. One hand rested on the small swell of her belly. Tell me what you were told, Park said. They said the raid went bad. Explosion. 2 dead on scene. 1 transported, died en route. They said facial trauma made ID impossible. They said it was Ryan. They didn't wait for dental or DNA, Park said, flat. They said Arlington was ready. Arlington is always ready, Park replied. Our job is to be right. In back, the reek made Atlas restless. He shifted, settled when Emily turned her head, then set his chin on Brooks's boot. Brooks pressed a towel to the pads. "You did good, partner," he muttered. Park's phone buzzed. She hit speaker. "Go." 2 bodies left county morgue labeled Cole and Torres, the voice said. "Power hiccup in the loading bay. Techs swapped gurneys, thought they fixed it. They didn't." "Where did the transported Marine go?" Park asked. "Naval Medical took a John Doe, severe head and facial trauma, intubated, deep sedation, ICU UNC male approximately 35. Emily's hand hit the dash. Ryan was 35. She exhaled like something heavy slid off her chest. "Text the unit," Park said. "We're 5 minutes out." The hospital rose white against gray clouds. Inside the ICU desk, a nurse, late 20s, blonde bun, freckles, looked up with a tired smile that faltered at the badges. "Can I help you?" "NCIS," Park said, placing credentials flat. "We need access to your unidentified mail from the warehouse and to preserve meds records and security footage for ICU. No alterations, no access without my authorization." "Yes, ma'am," the nurse said, paging the attending. While the page went out, Brooks stood with his hands clasped behind his back, the old parade rest that lived in his bones. Up close, he looked his years in sand and steel, jaw bristled with day-old gray, steady eyes, a man who had carried too many names to walls. Park moved the other way, quiet and kinetic, taking in exits, cameras, the floor's rhythm. She didn't fidget, she organized. Between memory and guilt, Torres's name crossed the room like a draft. Brooks bowed his head once for the young mechanic and put the weight where it belonged, on the people who would fix it. Dr. Patricia Reeves stepped through the sliding door. 50s, wire rim glasses, silver threaded through a braid, brown skin mapped by years in trauma. Her voice was calm. "I'm Dr. Reeves, ICU. You're here about our John Doe." "We think he's Sergeant Ryan Cole," Park said. "We need confirmation and control of the room." "He's under deep sedation for intracranial injury," Reeves said. "Facial reconstruction when stable. We had no ID. We were awaiting prints." "Please," Emily said. Reeves nodded. "One at a time. Minimal contact. The dog stays back." Atlas understood the boundary. He fell in beside Emily without crowding, ears high. The ICU hall hummed. Reeves stopped at a glassed room. A bandaged man lay among lines and blinking lights. The shoulders were right. The hands were right, one with a faint nick under the left thumbnail. Emily pressed her palm to the glass until her breath fogged a circle. "Ryan?" she said, both question and answer. Reeves opened the door. "Keep it brief. Hearing isn't always gone." Emily went in alone. The air was cool, sweet with the sterile sugar scent of chemistry fighting time. Up close, the damage was worse, and still she knew him from tendons and breath. She took his hand around the lines. "Hey," she whispered. "We messed up a funeral. Atlas fixed it. If you can hear me, hold the line. I'm right here." On the threshold, Park read the IV pole and med board. Brooks stood square, a wall. Atlas framed himself in the opening, body statue still, eyes molten gold. He listened. Ventilator whoosh, cardiac beep, the slow drip. His ears flicked. He took 2 steps, paused at the rail, and lifted his nose to the line running into Ryan's arm. "Dog back," Reeves warned. Atlas traced the tubing with his nose to the port, and then to the bag, nostrils flaring. He whined once, then again, a sound drawn from somewhere old. Emily turned. "What is it, boy?" Atlas's ears flattened. A quiet growl thrummed. "Sedatives, antibiotics, fluids," Park read from the labels. Reeves frowned. "Dose is appropriate, notes complete." Atlas touched the injection port lightly with his teeth, the way he indicated a seam when scent pooled there on searches. Emily's voice hardened. "He found the truth at the cemetery. You will not ignore him now." Reeves raised her hands. We'll pull fresh labs and audit meds. Now. Park keyed her radio. Secure the wing. Pharmacy, supply, CCTV last 72 hours. Chain of custody log starts now. Emily kissed her husband's bandaged knuckles. Atlas lowered his head until his muzzle rested on the sheet near Ryan's wrist, and held, as if counting beats. Outside, rain began to tap the glass, an even, patient code. Inside, machines ticked seconds that mattered again. Back at Arlington, a casket waited for the right name. Here, a man lay alive, waiting for the people who loved him to drag him the rest of the way back. The funeral was over. The mission had begun. The storm that rolled through San Diego that night didn't bother to ask permission. It came off the Pacific in sheets of salt and thunder, rattling the hospital windows like distant artillery. Inside the ICU, machines kept their quiet rhythm. Steady beeps, soft sighs of ventilators, the hum of fluorescent lights that refused to sleep. Ryan Cole had been declared a miracle patient, but miracles, Emily knew, didn't arrive clean. They came tangled in questions and the scent of fear. She sat beside his bed, the same spot she'd taken since the day Atlas had clawed open truth itself. Her husband's face, once nearly unrecognizable beneath bandages, was slowly finding its shape again. Strong jawline, the faint cleft in his chin, the nose slightly crooked from an old deployment fight in Kandahar. His left hand rested on the blanket, veins visible, fingers scarred from a life that never involved safety. Atlas lay on the floor near his feet, wrapped in light from the window. His paws were bound with gauze, but his eyes never left the man in the bed. Every time a monitor beeped off rhythm, his ears twitched. Every time the door opened, he lifted his head. Ready. Dr. Reeves entered quietly, clipboard in hand. Vitals are holding. Blood panels show improvement since we stopped the previous IV. Whatever was in that line, it was doing more harm than good. Emily nodded, exhausted but alert. You find who signed off on it? Working on that, Reeves said, but someone forged my signature on the medication orders. That's federal time if we prove it. Before Emily could respond, Agent Nina Park stepped in, trench coat damp from the rain. She closed the door behind her, lowering her voice. We've got movement. The nurse responsible, Patricia Coleman, doesn't exist. The real Coleman died in Chicago 6 months ago. Our suspect used her credentials. Emily's stomach dropped. Then who was she? Park's expression was grim. Her real name is Patricia Valdez, sister to Miguel Valdez, killed in a Marine raid 2 years ago, and cousin to Rico Valdez. The cartel boss, Emily finished. Park nodded. The same, and Ryan was supposed to testify against Rico before his team was ambushed. A cold wave passed through the room. Atlas rose, stiff but silent, tail low. He felt the tension before words could explain it. Emily's voice cracked slightly. So this wasn't an accident. They tried to finish what they started. Exactly, Park said. We've got people posted on every entrance, but the Valdez organization is patient. They'll wait for an opening. Reeves looked between them. Not in my hospital. Doctor, Park said gently. They already got in once. Don't underestimate what they'll try next. Rain hammered harder outside. Lightning flashed white through the blinds. Emily stood, restless. If they come again, they'll have to get through him, she said, nodding at Atlas. The dog's ears flicked, as if he understood. At 2:14 a.m., the power flickered. Just once, enough to make every machine blink. Backup generators kicked in immediately, but something subtle changed in the air. Atlas lifted his head. His nose quivered. Emily froze. You smell something? The dog moved to the vent above the door, whining low. He pawed once at the floor, then looked up again. Ears pinned, tail stiff. Atlas, Emily whispered. What is it? Dr. Reeves, returning for a late check, saw the dog's reaction and frowned. Gas, she murmured. I smell it too. Sweet. Park's voice came through the intercom seconds later. ICU level 3, evacuate immediately. We've got an airborne contaminant, non-lethal anesthetic concentration, but spreading fast. Reeves moved fast. Disconnect him now. Emily helped remove Ryan's oxygen tubing, switching to a portable unit. Atlas barked once, sharp, urgent, as guards outside scrambled. The dog lunged toward the door and sat hard in front of it, blocking entry. Park arrived with her weapon drawn, gas mask hanging around her neck. We've traced it to the ventilation shaft. Someone tried to knock out security. We need to move him now. Move where? Emily asked. Secure wing, underground, reinforced doors. Together they maneuvered the gurney through dim corridors. Nurses hurried past with other patients. Atlas stayed close, ignoring his pain. His gait was uneven, but his purpose was not. When they reached the secure wing, the lights stabilized. Reeves checked Ryan's monitors. Heart rate's good. He's fighting. Emily brushed her fingers over his hair. He always does. Park's phone buzzed. She turned away to answer, her voice low. Repeat that? Say again? Her jaw tightened. Understood. She hung up, eyes hard. Patricia Valdez was arrested 20 minutes ago near the docks, but she wasn't alone. Someone bigger planned this. Someone who knows the system. You think Rico's here? Reeves asked. Park shook her head. He doesn't get his hands dirty, but he's reaching. He knows Ryan's alive. Atlas growled softly. Park crouched and scratched his ear. I know, boy. We'll keep him safe. Morning came slow and gray. The rain finally stopped, leaving the world smelling like metal and renewal. Ryan stirred under the sheets. His eyelids fluttered. The first groan he made was hoarse and human, small but alive. Emily's hand flew to his. Ryan? He blinked, disoriented. Tears slipped down her cheeks before she realized she was crying. Yeah, it's me. You're safe. He looked around, squinting. Atlas? The dog stood, tail wagging gently, then pressed his muzzle against the bedrail. Ryan smiled faintly, trying to lift his hand. Hey, partner. Easy, Reeves said, rushing in. Don't push it. You've been under a long time. How long? Ryan's voice was rough. Sand. 4 days since the funeral, Park answered from the doorway. You caused quite a scene, Sergeant. Ryan's brow furrowed. Funeral. Emily squeezed his hand. They thought you were gone. Atlas knew better. He turned toward the dog. You always do. Atlas huffed softly, as if accepting credit. Then Ryan's eyes darkened. The raid, he murmured. Warehouse, Valdez. Don't strain, Park said. We'll get to that when you're stronger. No, Ryan said. Listen, they had inside intel. Someone tipped them. Who? Park asked. Didn't see, but one of ours. Someone close. The words hung heavy. Reeves adjusted his IV. You need rest. Ryan's eyelids fluttered. I'll rest when they're gone. Atlas laid his head on Ryan's arm again. The steady beep of the monitor synced with the dog's slow breathing, two rhythms aligned by trust. That evening, Park met Emily outside in the hospital courtyard. The clouds had broken into amber streaks, sunlight pouring through like forgiveness. Once he stabilizes, Park said, we're moving him to a military facility. Controlled perimeter, limited access. Only you and Atlas stay. Emily nodded, gazing at the horizon. He's not going to like being caged. Neither will the people hunting him, Park said. Atlas joined them, tail brushing Emily's leg. Park smiled faintly. You know, most dogs would have quit after what he's been through. He's still on duty. That's what makes him Atlas, Emily said. He doesn't stop until it's done. Behind them, thunder rumbled faintly out over the ocean, distant, like a promise still waiting to be kept. The secure wing didn't look like much, just a short corridor with matte paint, 2 reinforced doors, and a camera that blinked like a metronome. But everyone inside treated it as if it were the last good room on Earth. Morning light filtered through a narrow window, lifting dust like pale gold. Ryan Cole dozed in a slant of sun, the swelling along his brow turning from storm purple to faded yellow. Emily watched the rise and fall of his chest and tried to breathe with him, slow and even. Atlas slept near the bed, muzzle on his paws, bandaged pads showing through clean gauze. Agent Nina Park stood by the door, jacket off, sleeves rolled. Her hair, dark and sharp at the jawline, framed eyes that missed little. Gunnery Sergeant Brooks had posted 2 Marines in the hall, squared away and quiet. Dr. Patricia Reeves rotated through like a tide, checking vitals, scanning orders, returning with coffee that she swore was terrible but drank anyway. The place had settled into a rhythm. Machine beeps, shoe squeaks, low voices that felt like a pact. Ryan surfaced, blinked at the ceiling, found Emily's face, then Atlas. He lifted a hand and scratched the dog's cheek in the same 3 count he'd used since training fields in Badlands. Emily smiled without meaning to. "How's the head?" "Annoyed," he rasped. "Present." He glanced at Park. "Any news?" "Patricia Valdez is in custody," Park said. "Lawyered up inside an hour. We also pulled the pharmacy logs and ICU badge swipes for the last week. They don't match. Someone else helped." Brooks shifted his weight. "Inside job." "Looks that way," Park said. "Maintenance schedules were altered too. Vents cleaned at 2 in the morning by a crew that doesn't exist." Reeves stepped in, crisp and centered. "I signed off on a move for late afternoon. Naval ambulance to a military facility up the hill. Fewer entrances, better control." Emily nodded. "Do it." Atlas lifted his head, ears twitching. He sniffed, slow and deliberate, cataloging the room. For a heartbeat, he held the air like a note, then set his head back down. Reeves smiled at him. "We're all right, handsome." They weren't, not exactly, and everyone knew it. But saying so out loud felt like inviting a stranger to sit down. By noon, the rain had burned off. Sun slid across the floor inch by steady inch. 2 security nurses swapped posts. A food cart rattled by. Somewhere far off, a helicopter chopped the sky. Park scrolled footage on a tablet, frame by frame, until her eyes watered. "Here," she said at last. She showed Brooks a clip, a figure in hospital greens, mask, cap, glasses that reflected light. The badge name read D. Morrow, RRT. The face didn't match the credential photo. "Respiratory therapist," Brooks said. "Imposter," Park replied. "In and out of ICU during the power flicker." Reeves looked up sharply. "Respiratory has access to vents." The door hissed. A cart. Rolled in, stacked with supplies. Sterile packs, tubing, IV bags. The man pushing it wore scrubs and a lead apron, the kind radiology techs forget to take off. His gait was smooth, balanced. He kept his head slightly turned, like cameras were bright. His badge read G. Porter, Imaging. Reeves stepped toward him. Imaging wasn't requested. "Portable chest film for Cole," he said, voice level through the mask. "Orders got bumped." Park's hand found the weight of her sidearm. "Who bumped them?" "Dr. Reeves," he said without looking at her. "Unlikely," Reeves said softly. Atlas stood. Not fast, careful because his pads still hurt, but he rose to full height and locked on. His ears went forward, then flattened by a degree. He took 2 steps, stopped, and turned his head away like he'd lost interest. His body loosened, shoulders folding the way they did when exhaustion finally won. Park's eyes flicked to Emily. Emily didn't move. She had seen this once, years ago, after a training run. The dog pretending to wobble, to draw a man's pity closer. "Sir," Reeves said to the tech, "we'll reschedule after transfer." "It'll take 2 minutes," he said. He smiled with only his voice. "Might save his life." Atlas sagged to his elbows and let out a whine that sounded like a seam splitting. He licked one paw as if it hurt worse than it did, then rolled his shoulder, belly half exposed, a surrender that wasn't. The tech glanced down. His right hand stopped gripping the cart. It slid, casual, toward a pocket. Brooks said, "Hands where I can see them." The tech froze. His pocket hand came up holding a syringe. Clear fluid, no cap. "Back up," Park snapped. He tilted the needle toward his own neck. "One step closer and—" Atlas exploded off the floor. It wasn't the hard, straight-line hit of a training bite. It was an oblique crash, shoulder to thigh, enough to spin the man, to knock the syringe wide without tearing flesh. The needle clattered. Park closed the distance in a blur, pinning wrist to tile, boot on the loose hand. Brooks took the other arm and folded it behind the man's back with the efficiency of someone who'd done this in dust and rain. The cart rattled, settled. The syringe rolled under the bed. Reeves kicked it away, then caught a whiff with practiced nose. "Potassium chloride." Her lips thinned. Lethal if he hit a line. Park cuffed the man and tugged down his mask. A clean-shaven jaw, a scar near the ear, eyes that slid off people and landed on exits. She read the badge again, then stripped it. "Name?" "Porter," he said. "You rehearsed that," Park replied. "Try again." He smiled without warmth. "Lawyer." Emily's breath finally returned. She looked at Atlas, who was standing now, tail up, chest heaving. Blood spotted the gauze where his pads had split again. She crouched and pressed both hands against his shoulders until the tremor in her own fingers quit. "Good boy," she whispered. "God, good boy." Atlas leaned into her and closed his eyes for a heartbeat like a man does after a long carry. "Get him out," Park told the Marines. "Quietly." She stooped, fished the syringe with a gloved hand, and held it to the light. "We'll trace the lot number." Reeves checked Ryan's monitors, then Ryan, then Emily. "Transfer now," she said. "No more waiting." They moved like a drill they hadn't practiced but somehow knew. Brooks cleared the hall. Park radioed the ambulance bay. Reeves pushed with Emily at the gurney's rail. Atlas paced at Ryan's flank, limping but sure, head level, eyes cutting to doors and corners and shadows that still believed they could hide men. In the ambulance elevator, silence clanged. Park looked at Emily. That wasn't a one-off. Someone with access fed him time and place. Emily swallowed. "Then we run faster." The back doors slammed open to a rectangle of sky. The ambulance sat idling, ramp down. 2 Navy medics stood ready. A woman with a buzz cut and hawk-bright eyes. A man with a forearm like a pile driver and a smile he didn't use. IDs checked, then checked again. Atlas hopped up first, turned, and planted both front paws on the step. A living gate. Emily eased in beside Ryan. Reeves climbed, hand on the ventilator. Park and Brooks closed the doors. They rolled. Sirens stayed dark. Speed did the talking. The driver threaded hospital roads like he'd memorized their moods. Atlas stood braced between gurney and wall, sniffing at every change in air. Emily held Ryan's hand and counted his squeezes. 1 weak, 2 stronger. 1 steady. Reeves watched waveforms with a tight-jawed focus that didn't have room for fear. Halfway up the hill, the ambulance's radio crackled, then died. The cabin lights flickered once, recovered. Park's voice came from the cab through the pass-through window. "We lost comms for 10 seconds. "EMP, Brooks asked. "More likely a jammer," Park said. Small, portable. Atlas moved to the rear doors and sniffed the seam. His tail lifted a notch. He looked back at Emily and let out one soft huff that meant notice. The ambulance slowed. The driver cursed under his breath. Road crew ahead. Didn't show on dispatch. Park peered through the windshield. A white utility truck straddled both lanes, cones set at perfect intervals, 2 men in hard hats pretending to discuss asphalt. Their posture was wrong. Feet too light, hands too free. Park tapped the partition. We're not stopping. The driver nodded once and cranked the wheel. The ambulance jumped the curb, bounced across a strip of grass, and blew past the cones. One of the hard hats flinched and reached for his pocket. Brooks already had the window down, hand out, badge up, stare bright with the promise of trouble. The hard hat reconsidered. They made the gate in 2 minutes that felt like a page torn from a book. The guard shack checked credentials, hit the switch, and swung the steel inward. Inside the perimeter, everything eased by a degree. Angles sharper, lines cleaner, the sense that the walls had been built by people who counted threats for a living. They parked under an overhang. Atlas jumped down, then looked back at Ryan as if asking permission. Ryan's fingers twitched, and that was answer enough. They wheeled into a brighter corridor, antiseptic and humming. Reeves signed custody documents with quick, neat strokes. Park stood between the double doors and watched both directions with a predator's patience. When the room settled again, new monitors, new bed, same man, Emily lowered her head to Ryan's and laughed once, a short, shocked sound that held relief by the throat. Brooks stood with his hands behind his back until the shake left his shoulders. Park finally sat, just for a second, then stood like the chair had betrayed her. Atlas circled once, twice, and lay by the bed. He placed his head on Ryan's forearm, careful of lines and tape. His eyes didn't quite close. They never fully did on duty. Reeves drew a breath she must have been holding for an hour. We keep him stable, she said. We let the body do what it knows. She looked at Atlas. And the dog keeps us honest. Park's phone buzzed. A text. Badge Morrow located. Owner on leave. Wallet stolen last week. Another. Imaging. 1 apron missing. She looked at Emily. Whoever sent that man knew our patterns. Emily brushed a thumb along Ryan's knuckles. So we break our patterns. Ryan opened his eyes, cloudy but present. He found Atlas first. The dog thumped his tail once. Ryan's mouth moved, dry. Show off. Emily laughed again, a soft, cracked thing that finally turned warm. He learned from you. Outside, the sun climbed higher, clean and wide. Inside, the room held. The second attempt had failed. It wouldn't be the last. But for now, in this cut of quiet, the rhythm returned. Man, dog, woman, their breaths overlapping like a promise that had survived the night. The secure base on the hill looked calm from the outside. Rows of beige walls, guards in navy fatigues, the smell of pine drifting through open windows. But inside, everyone moved like the walls were breathing with them. Every door click echoed. Every step sounded counted. Ryan Cole had been conscious for 48 hours. The swelling on his face had faded to a pale scar that would never quite disappear. And his voice was returning in low, sandpaper tones. But inside his head, pieces of the raid still burned like film stuck in the projector. He sat up slowly on the hospital bed. I remember flashes, he said to Agent Nina Park, who stood across from him with her notepad. Muzzle fire? Concrete dust? Someone yelling that we were compromised. Compromised how? She asked. Ryan rubbed his temple. A radio channel that wasn't ours came online just before the explosion. Someone from our own unit broadcast coordinates. Valdez's men were waiting inside. Brooks folded his arms. Which channel? 7 Golf, Ryan said. Only Command had that access. Park exchanged a glance with Brooks. We'll pull the comm logs. But if that's true, the leak isn't just medical, it's military. From the floor, Atlas gave a low, restless whine. He'd healed enough to walk properly again, though the pads were still pink from new growth. His ears twitched every time the hallway door opened, his instincts refusing rest. Dr. Reeves entered with a tablet. Your vitals are strong. We'll reduce the sedatives starting today. Good, Ryan said, because I'm done lying still while someone tries to finish me off. Emily put a hand on his arm. You're not ready to be a Marine yet. Ryan looked at her, tired but steady. I'm not trying to be a Marine. I'm trying to make sure you and Atlas live long enough to forget this place. Park pocketed her notepad. You'll get your chance, but first we need proof. Someone on the inside is feeding intel, and whoever it is knows you're alive. That's why they hit the ICU. Ryan nodded. So we find the ghost. By evening, the wind shifted. The base lights turned amber as the sun died behind the hills. Park and Brooks reviewed security feeds in a cramped operations room that smelled of coffee and gun oil. Dozens of screens flickered. Corridors, gates, labs, supply docks. Brooks pointed to one feed. Maintenance again. Same badge used at hospital last week. Porter. But Porter's in custody. Park leaned closer. The figure in the video wore the same posture, same calm stride. Someone's replicating credentials. They're inside the system, not the building. How deep? She didn't answer. Her phone buzzed with a new text. Incoming logistics delivery 2300 hours, authorized by Command Ops. Brooks frowned. We didn't order anything. Park exhaled through her nose. Then our ghost just sent himself an invitation. At 10:50 p.m., the sound of a truck engine echoed in the loading bay. The night guard checked the manifest, signed without question. It bore the commanding officer's signature, clear and perfect. He waved the driver through. Minutes later, a crate marked medical equipment, sterile, rolled down the ramp. Inside it, under foam and wires, a small transmitter blinked once every 5 seconds. Its signal spread through the base like invisible ink. Atlas heard it first. His ears pricked, eyes snapping open from a light doze. He growled softly, low and warning. Emily stirred. What is it? He stood and moved to the corner near the vent, nose working. The sound was too high for human ears, but clear as thunder to him. Ryan, now seated upright, noticed the shift. What's wrong? Atlas barked once, sharp, insistent. Park entered seconds later. He's onto something again? Yeah, Ryan said. He's hearing something. They followed the dog into the hall. Atlas stopped near the supply elevator, pawed the seam, and barked again. Brooks checked the panel. Weird. System shows it's offline. Park turned to a young corporal standing guard nearby. Run a thermal scan. The corporal lifted the handheld device, frowned. Heat signature inside, small but active. Park swore under her breath. Step back. Brooks, open it slow. When the doors parted, light spilled across the walls. Inside the elevator was the crate. New, clean, stenciled with medical codes. A faint red blink glowed beneath the lid. Ryan recognized the rhythm instantly. That's a beacon, not a bomb. GPS uplink. Brooks yanked the latch, revealing the transmitter nested among fake equipment. Park shut it off, her gloves clicking against metal. They were marking the base for a second strike. Drone or assault team. Reeves, rushing in from the other side, stared at it. How the hell did it get clearance? Park's jaw clenched. Same way as before, someone up top opened the gate. At 11:30, the alert siren wailed once. Short, controlled. Not full lockdown, but warning. Park gave orders into her comm. Secure perimeter. No vehicles in or out. Confirm airspace control. Brooks took a rifle from the rack by the door. You trust base command? Right now, she said. I trust the dog more. Atlas stood by Ryan's bed again, restless, tail switching like a metronome. Ryan swung his legs off the mattress, testing balance. His strength was raw but returning. If this is going where I think, they're not just after me. They're after what I know. What you know? Park asked. The raid wasn't about drugs, Ryan said. Valdez's people were guarding data drives, encrypted comm logs. I pulled one before the blast. Where is it now? In my rucksack, Ryan said slowly. Back at the base, or it should have been. Park exhaled hard. Then that's what the ghost wants. The drive ties someone in uniform to the cartel. Brooks looked at Ryan. You saying command might be dirty? I'm saying someone high enough to clear fake deliveries is already bought. The first shot came at midnight. A single crack outside the perimeter, followed by 2 muffled bursts. The Marines at post returned fire, then radio silence. Park drew her weapon. They're testing our defenses. Reeves locked the inner door. We can't stay in here if they breach. Emily stood by Ryan, shaking but composed. Then where? Ryan pointed to the maintenance tunnel blueprint pinned on the wall. Back exit under the medical wing leads downhill to the armory, narrow enough that drones can't follow. Brooks grinned faintly. Still thinking like an operator. I'm still breathing like one, Ryan said. Atlas barked twice. Ready. Park grabbed her comm. All teams, evacuate priority targets through South Tunnel Bravo 1. Move now. The hallway filled with echoing boots. Guards guided civilians toward the stairwell. Atlas stayed in front of Ryan and Emily, his head low, body taut. As they entered the tunnel, the air turned cold and metallic. The emergency lights flickered red. Behind them, distant thunder rolled. No longer weather. Halfway down, Park's radio crackled again. This is command. Stand down. Repeat, stand down. Friendly units approaching. Brooks frowned. That's not the right call sign. Ryan looked back toward the sound of boots from the tunnel's far end. They're already inside. The first intruder rounded the corner. A man in base uniform, insignia correct, eyes wrong. He raised his weapon. Atlas lunged. The tunnel erupted in sound. Gunfire, shouting, the echo of fury confined by concrete. When the smoke cleared, Park's voice came steady. 2 down. 1 wounded. Ryan, you good? Fine, he said, leaning on the wall. Atlas? The dog limped toward him, a graze across his shoulder fur, but no deeper. Emily knelt, whispering softly, hands trembling against his neck. Brooks checked the fallen men. All wearing our patches. Inside job confirmed. Park holstered her gun and glanced at Ryan. That drive better be worth it. Ryan stared down the tunnel where the intruders had come from, jaw tight. It's the only way we end this. Behind them, Atlas stood guard at the mouth of the corridor, eyes glowing in the red light. For now they had survived the ghost's second strike. But the hunt was far from over. The mountain base had survived the night, but no one felt safe enough to call it morning. The scent of gunpowder still lingered in the tunnels, and every echo sounded like it carried intent. Above ground, dawn bled into a sky the color of steel. Marines moved in quiet formation across the yard, replacing panels, sweeping casings, and logging damage. Inside the infirmary, Ryan Cole sat up for the first time without help. He wore a gray t-shirt, bandages tracing his ribs, and a look that said he'd already left the room in his head. Emily stood behind him, folding his blanket like routine could make the world behave. You're not supposed to be out of bed, Dr. Reeves said, arms crossed. Supposed to never worked on Marines. Ryan flexed his shoulder. If they're coming for that drive, I need to get to it before they do. Park entered, phone pressed to her ear, listening. She ended the call and exhaled. Our ghost scrubbed the network last night. Wiped 4 layers of access logs. Whoever they are, they had command-level clearance. They knew we'd find that transmitter. Brooks leaned against the wall, still in dusty combat gear. And we still don't know where the data drive went. Ryan stood. I do. Everyone looked at him. When the explosion hit, he said, I handed my rucksack to Corporal Dean Torres, told him to stash it in the fallback cache behind the comm tower. He never made it out. But Torres did what Marines do. He finished the job. Brooks straightened. The comm tower cache is under lock. Haven't opened it since the raid. Then that's where we start, Park said. We'll move in daylight, small team. Brooks, you're with me. Reeves stays with Emily. Ryan. He cut her off. You'll need me. You're still injured. I know what we're looking for, and I know how Valdez encrypts his drives. You don't. Park looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't. Fine, but you follow my lead. Atlas wagged his tail once, low, quiet. Ryan glanced at him. He comes too. The road to the old communications outpost cut through pine and dust, the truck's tires cracking gravel. Atlas rode between Ryan and Brooks, nose near the open window, catching scents of rain and metal. The air was crisp, the kind that filled lungs and cleared fog. Park drove, eyes scanning mirrors. No signal within a mile of the tower, she said. Either interference or someone's jamming again. Could be both, Ryan said. Valdez's techs love redundancy. When they reached the ridge, the tower rose against the horizon like a rusted spear. The building below it was half buried in dirt and concrete. The door still bore the Marine emblem, faded but proud. Brooks forced the lock with a practiced twist. The door groaned open, releasing a gust of stale air and old oil. Atlas padded in first, tail low, head moving side to side. Still smells like Afghanistan, Ryan said, softly. Park nodded. That's because it was built by the same contractors. They descended into the basement. Dust floated through shafts of sunlight from cracks in the wall. The storage racks were mostly empty. Old radios, broken crates, a few sealed containers marked classified. Ryan went to one in the corner, the lock burned but intact. He knelt, brushed dust away, and tapped a pattern on the surface. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The same rhythm Atlas had scratched on his coffin. The latch released. Inside was a small metal box wrapped in duct tape. Ryan cut it open. Inside, cushioned by foam, was a black drive no bigger than a matchbook. The symbol on it, a silver trident over a wave, was Valdez's seal. That's it, Ryan said. Park pulled a static bag from her pocket. We'll get it to forensics. Atlas barked once, sharp. What? He turned toward the stairwell, growling low. Brooks swung his rifle toward the door. Contact! Shadows flickered at the top of the stairs. Then gunfire roared, short, professional bursts. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cover! Park shouted. They dove behind crates as rounds tore through the room. Atlas stayed close to Ryan, teeth bared. Brooks fired back, controlled, double taps. 2, maybe 3. Ryan grabbed the drive, slid it into his vest pocket. They're not random shooters. They know exactly where to hit. Park reloaded, voice low. Extraction route? There's a drainage shaft behind the tower, Ryan said. It connects to the ravine. Then move! Brooks threw a flashbang up the stairs. The explosion cracked like lightning. They ran through smoke and chaos, Atlas bounding ahead, barking to guide the way. Outside, the air felt like freedom. The tower loomed above them, antenna bent against the sky. They sprinted for the ravine. Bullets chased them, chewing dirt at their heels. Brooks fired suppression bursts. Park threw another grenade. White smoke rolled out thick and fast. Atlas darted down the slope first, leading them into the narrow gully below. Ryan stumbled, caught himself, hand pressed to his ribs. "Keep moving." By the time they reached the bottom, the noise had faded. Only the hiss of wind and pine needles remained. Brooks scanned the ridge. "They're regrouping. We have 30 seconds tops." Ryan held up the drive. "This thing's worth dying for, which means it's worth keeping alive." Park keyed her radio. "Command, this is Park. We have the asset. Request immediate air pickup. South Ravine, Sector 7. Static. Then a voice came through. "Negative. Airspace compromised. No bird inbound." "Great," Brooks muttered. Park looked at Ryan. "We'll have to hike." Ryan nodded, then noticed Atlas staring up the ridge, hackles raised. "He's not looking at them," Ryan said quietly. "He's listening." "What do you mean?" Atlas let out a single low growl, deep and certain. Ryan turned to Park. "They're not retreating! They're calling in artillery!" Park's blood went cold. "Move!" They scrambled through the ravine as the first shell hit the ridge. The explosion tore through trees, shrapnel raining like iron rain. Atlas leapt against Ryan, knocking him flat just before a chunk of rock slammed where he'd been standing. The second shell landed farther away. Then silence. When the dust settled, the ridge was gone. Only smoke. Brooks coughed. "They're trying to erase evidence." Park looked back at the rising smoke, voice shaking but controlled. "They failed. We've got what they wanted." Ryan patted his vest pocket, then looked at Atlas. The dog's chest heaved, but his eyes were bright. "You saved me again, partner." Atlas wagged his tail once. Park pointed uphill. "Let's get back before they realize we're not dead." Hours later, in a secure lab back at base, Park slid the recovered drive into a shielded reader. Lines of encrypted data scrolled across the monitor. "Can you read it?" Ryan asked. She typed commands, frowned. "Military-grade encryption, but with cartel syntax. It's a hybrid." Brooks leaned over. "So what's on it?" Park's jaw clenched. "Not what? Who?" She turned the screen toward them. A list of names appeared, some in civilian titles, some in military call signs. Near the top, COL, Marcus Hawthorne, base commander. Ryan's eyes hardened. "That's our ghost." Park nodded. "And he's been in command this whole time." Ryan looked down at Atlas, who stared back, silent, ready. Then we ended. Rain returned to the Oregon hills before dawn, washing soot from the mountain base and cloaking everything in a mist that smelled of iron and pine. The flag outside the command building hung limp, heavy with water, its stars blurred by gray light. Inside, the corridors were too quiet for a place that had just survived an attack. Ryan Cole sat on the edge of the infirmary bed, lacing his boots with the calm of a man who'd already decided what came next. His ribs still hurt when he breathed, but pain no longer asked permission to stay. It was simply there, like gravity. Atlas stood beside him, tail still, eyes locked on the door. Emily stepped in holding a thermos. Her black hair was damp, her face pale from sleepless nights. "You shouldn't be walking yet," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "That's becoming a theme around here." She hesitated, then set the thermos beside him. "If you're going after him, don't do it alone." Ryan's voice stayed low. "If I don't, he'll come for you next. You, Atlas, everyone." A new voice came from the doorway. "You're not wrong," said Agent Nina Park, stepping in with her tactical jacket zipped to the throat. "But you're not going alone. Brooks and I are coming, and we're not asking for permission." Ryan nodded once. Then we do it clean. No backup, no radio chatter. He owns the net. Park slid a folder onto the counter. Inside were satellite prints and personnel rosters. Hawthorne's helicopter is prepped for inspection at the upper pad. If he's running, he'll use that bird to vanish. We take him before he lifts off. Brooks entered, rifle slung, jaw set. Bird's armed. He's expecting company. Atlas gave a short bark, as if seconding the plan. Then we don't disappoint him, Ryan said. The climb to the helipad was steep and slick. Fog crawled over the tarmac, swallowing shapes whole. The helicopter sat at the far edge, black, polished, blades still. 2 guards flanked the hangar door, rifles resting against their shoulders. Park crouched behind a concrete barrier, whispered, "We do this quiet." Ryan nodded, signaling Atlas forward. The dog moved like smoke, low, silent, precise. He padded toward the nearest guard, paused, then lunged, knocking the weapon aside with his body weight. Ryan was already there, catching the man as he fell and lowering him to the ground. Brooks took the second with a chokehold, clean and fast. They advanced to the hangar. Through the open bay, Colonel Marcus Hawthorne stood by a table stacked with maps and hard drives. His uniform was immaculate, medals gleaming even in the dim light. He was tall, broad, with steel gray hair and the calm of someone who had never been caught doing anything he didn't plan. He didn't look surprised to see them. "You should be dead, Sergeant." Ryan stepped forward, rain dripping from his jacket. "You made that mistake twice already." Hawthorne smiled without warmth. "You think you understand what's happening here? You think you're the hero in this story?" "I don't need to be the hero," Ryan said. "I just need to stop you." Park circled left, weapon raised. "Hands where we can see them, Colonel." Hawthorne lifted them slowly, still speaking. "You have no idea what that data means. The drive doesn't expose corruption. It exposes policy. We've been trading cartel intel for safe passage of our own operations. That's how the world works now. Balance through blood." Brooks spat on the floor. "You sold Marines for balance?" "Sacrifices," Hawthorne said calmly, "for the greater order." Ryan took another step, voice sharp as glass. "You don't get to decide who the sacrifices are." Hawthorne's expression hardened. "You think this ends with me? There are others higher than I'll ever be. Kill me, and you'll never reach them." "Maybe not," Ryan said, "but you'll stop hurting anyone else." The colonel's hand twitched toward his belt. Atlas growled, a deep, thunderous warning that filled the hangar. Ryan fired first. The bullet hit the pistol in Hawthorne's hand, shattering it against the floor. Park moved fast, securing him while Brooks swept the desk for weapons. Hawthorne didn't struggle. He just smiled through the pain. "You've doomed yourselves, all of you. You think they'll let this truth live?" Park's voice stayed even. "Truth's already out." She held up her phone, screen showing a green progress bar. "Upload complete." Hawthorne's composure cracked for the first time. "You broadcasted it." "Every name," Park said. "Every file. You can't bury ghosts once they start talking." Hawthorne's jaw tightened, but his eyes flicked upward, to the helicopter. Ryan followed the glance. The dash lights were active. "Trap!" he shouted. The explosion tore through the hangar like a hammer made of light. When sound returned, it came in fragments, metal groaning, glass raining, the distant whine of an alarm. Ryan's ears rang. He tasted blood. Park was down but breathing. Brooks crawled from behind a support beam, coughing smoke. Hawthorne lay near the blast crater, uniform burned, chest rising shallowly. He'd triggered the failsafe. Ryan staggered toward him. "You still think you can control how this ends?" Hawthorne's voice was a whisper now. "I already have." A second charge clicked beneath the helicopter's hull. Atlas barked once. Urgent! Ryan dove, dragging Park behind a fuel drum. Brooks followed. The explosion shredded the chopper, heat licking through the air. Debris rained across the pad, but the concrete held. When the fire died down, only smoke remained where Hawthorne had been. Nothing left to arrest. Park wiped soot from her face, breathing hard. He destroyed himself and the evidence. Ryan opened his fist. In it lay the small, trident-marked drive. He smiled faintly. Not all of it. She blinked. How? I made a copy before we left the lab, Ryan said. Rule 1, never bet everything on one bullet. Brooks laughed hoarsely. Guess we're still in business. Sirens rose in the distance. Base security, medics, the slow return of order. Hours later, the storm passed. The world smelled like wet earth and metal. Ryan stood outside the barracks, one arm bandaged, watching Atlas chase raindrops across the gravel yard. Emily approached quietly, a blanket around her shoulders. It's over? She asked. Ryan looked toward the rising sun. For him, yeah. For us, it never really ends. She stepped closer, slipped her hand into his. Maybe that's not so bad. Maybe it just means we keep fighting for the right reasons. Atlas trotted back, dropping a stick at Ryan's boots. The soldier laughed softly, the sound foreign after so many nights of silence. Park joined them, hair damp, jacket unzipped. Washington's sending investigators. You'll both have hearings. But the data's secure, and the people who need to see it already have. Ryan nodded. And Hawthorne? Official report says explosion accident, she said. Unofficially, he killed himself rather than face what he built. Brooks walked past, raising a coffee mug. That's one less ghost in uniform. Emily smiled faintly. And one more reason to go home. Ryan looked down at Atlas. You ready to rest, partner? The dog tilted his head, then barked once, sharp and playful. Ryan knelt, scratching behind his ears. Yeah, me neither. They stood together in the new light, man, woman, and dog, survivors stitched by faith and fire. The wind caught the flag above the base, shaking water from its folds until the stars shone bright again. For the first time in a long time, Ryan Cole believed the world might still hold something worth protecting. Sometimes, miracles don't come with thunder or angels. Sometimes they arrive on 4 paws, covered in mud and blood, reminding us that love is still stronger than fear. Ryan thought he was dead. Emily thought she'd lost him forever. But God had other plans, and he sent Atlas to finish what no man could. Because when faith walks beside you, no darkness can truly win. If this story touched your heart, share it. Leave a comment about the miracle you've witnessed in your own life. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep spreading stories of hope, loyalty, and second chances. May God bless you, your family, and every faithful soul still guarding us in silence.